Hello and welcome to this live coverage today, Saturday, the 24th of November of 2018, a very exciting day for Bahrain as we cover the process of the parliamentary and municipal elections for the 5th legislative term. This is yet another pledge to the first vote Bahrain has witnessed, which is the National Action Charter, which laid the foundations of the democratic action following the vision and reform project of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. The vote started this morning at 8 a.m. and the doors will close at 8 p.m. The number of candidates running for the parliamentary elections this year is 291. The number of voters eligible to cast their ballot for parliamentary elections is 365,467. Of them are 183,729 males and 181,738 females. Meanwhile, the number of voters eligible to vote in the municipal elections is 285,991. Of them, 144,002 are males and 141,909 females. This year's elections see the competition of 428 candidates, of which 291 for the 40 seats of the Council of Representatives and 137 candidates for the municipal councils across the kingdom spread around the 4 governorates. The number of voters eligible to vote in both ballot boxes is 424,000, with an increase of 47,278 votes from 2014. There are 54 polling stations across the 4 governorate constituencies that the voters can go to, in addition to 14 general polling stations that include the Bahrain International Airport, Manam Asif Mall, the Ministry of Education Hall, and the Bahrain International Circuit. Today, citizens go to cast their ballot for both the parliamentary and municipal elections, while non-Bahrainis who obtain a permanent residential address in the Kingdom of Bahrain have the right to cast their ballot in the municipal elections.
The reform project of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa is characterized by a number of features. It's a comprehensive national project surrounded by all political forces and currents, the state and society, political elites and the masses of the Bahraini people. It provides democracy as a way of life in practice, as well as institutions, roles and interactions in political life by enhancing participation and emphasizing the role of institutions, especially the legislative, judicial and executive authorities. It also preserves the state of the rule of law and the separation of powers and rationality in order to achieve the objectives of growth and renaissance, while at the same time rooting factors of stability and coexistence and renunciation of violence and terrorism. There are many aspects and fields of achievements under the reform project of His Majesty the King, and the approaches that address these achievements are varied and numerous, but the approach to political development focuses on specific dimensions and aspects, foremost of which are institutional and constitutional framework and completing the construction of the modern national state. The reform process began with the adoption of the National Action Charter by consensus by a whopping 98.4% of the population in the referendum held on February 14, 2001. This affirmed the solidarity of the people around its leadership in support of the reform efforts. The Charter deals with the general philosophy, principles and foundations that constitute the basic elements of society and the system of government, as well as the foundations of the national economy in 7 consecutive chapters, preceded by an introduction that outlines the basic features of Bahrain's historical presence. In spite of the small size of the Kingdom of Bahrain, the Kingdom's projects and achievements have not ceased to continue in accordance with a vision that emphasizes that the citizen is the basis of development and its main goal. Democracy, human rights, and free and fair elections have become a reality and pattern of practice in the political life of the kingdom under the reform process of His Majesty. The Human Development Reports of the United Nations Development Programme can confirm that Bahrain has consistently ranked high on the scale of human rights and expatriate protection. The Kingdom of Bahrain Declaration, written by His Majesty, as well as the launch of the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence, are both examples of His Majesty's vision of religious freedom, which has garnered international attention. On the economic level, the Kingdom's policies focused on diversifying the base of the national economy and investing in the people, while stressing the pursuit of economic freedom and openness to the world. There is also a constant interest in human development, the development of infrastructure, and the creation of a distinct investment climate characterized by a stable security environment that is attractive to investors financially, commercially, and legally. The Kingdom of Bahrain has also recently submitted its first voluntary report on the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals 2030 to the United Nations Economic and Social Council during the High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development. The kingdom takes an integrated and balanced development strategy that takes into consideration the promotion of the infrastructure sectors, the establishment of new cities, and the renewal of existing cities and villages. It also takes into consideration the various elements and sectors and works to adopt a stable and balanced policy. At the level of public policies, the kingdom has achieved successive achievements in various fields such as education, health, communication, security, and others. In the field of education, Bahrain has successfully pursued its national project for the development of education and training since it started in January 2006 by improving the performance of schools, developing private education and university education, intensifying internal and external missions, honouring and caring for outstanding students, and promoting the development of higher education. Health services also witnessed a remarkable development, in line with the standards of the World Health Organization, providing comprehensive health care and raising the quality of health services. The youth receive special attention from the state, where an integrated strategy has been developed to invest in the youth and guide them in the most effective areas. The focus is on helping young people find suitable employment opportunities and empowering them through training, rehabilitation, and sports activities. In the area of women, continuous achievements have been made in favor of the economic, social, and political empowerment of women in the kingdom. The Supreme Council for Women was established in 2001 and continues to oversee that Bahraini women receive equal opportunities in education, healthcare, and candidacy for parliamentary and municipal councils. The Kingdom of Bahrain has acceded to several international conventions against discrimination against women, such as the CEDAW Convention. It has also readapted many laws to promote women's status, rights, and equality. The reform project has seen continuous achievements in all areas of life. It has become a reality in the economic and social structure, as well as in the political life of the citizens. These achievements have cumulative and clear effects. The philosophy of the government in Bahrain stands on firm principles, particularly interaction and balance. With the advent of the 21st century, the Kingdom of Bahrain witnessed radical political, economic, and social changes brought by the reform project of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. His Majesty's vision is a pioneer project that allowed the Bahraini citizens to contribute positively, effectively, and regularly in the process of social development. Reporting for Bahrain International, I'm محمد.
Viewers, with us today is the program analyst at Derasat, Mahmoud Abdalghafar. Welcome to the studio and to our live coverage.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's also an honor to discuss the national elections of this year's. And like you mentioned before, it's actually the 5th round of elections. And it's a very important date in Bahrain's history because every subsequent round that occurs for the elections increases Bahrain's development and maturity within the democratic process, cater towards specifically what the Bahraini public needs. And this also includes both residents, non-Bahraini residents, and citizens. And every round, actually, we see a little bit more accumulation of experience on how the democratic process will occur and develop in time.
محود, maybe you kind of cut to the chase and answered the question that I wanted to ask you first, and that is your reflections on this democratic process. But like we saw in the report that was aired a few minutes ago, this is the fruits of the reform project of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. We've seen a marked increase in participation with regards to electoral candidates this time around. What are your reflections on this marked increase?
Well, the increase is a testament actually to the number of interest and involvement of the Bahraini public to engage in the legislative process in Bahrain, to engage in the democratic system of Bahrain. And with this increased interest, actually, it creates a very strong precedent for the future. It means that the Bahraini public is always interested in having their voices heard through the legislative process. And it will also cater towards future generations who will also develop different methods and techniques that will be suitable for the Bahraini democratic system as well. You will see more use of social media, of different ways to communicate with constituents in a more effective manner. And it's also a testament to the leadership of King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa because he set out this vision, this comprehensive reform program that encapsulates the entire aspect of Bahraini life. This is both politically, economically, and socially. And now we are in the 5th round of the political process going through the political reforms set out by His Majesty the King. And it's a testament because every round will bring new levels of experience, of very individualistic attributes that will set a foundation for the future.
Mr. Abdulghafar, the statistics show that women candidates, especially this time round, have increased about 56% of the candidates. There's a 56% marked increase in women candidates. What is your reflection on that, on this escalation of women participation in the electoral process?
Well, like you said, women are key stakeholders in Bahrain, and always have been. And this specific statistic, 56%, actually is much greater than the global average. The global average of women participation in elections and in office is around 23.2%, according to the Inter-Parliamentary Union. So you can see from this statistic itself that Bahrain is well above the global average, which is a testament to the Bahraini women and the state as well. And it's also important because it reflects that Bahrain does not suffer much from a gender gap as witnessed in other countries, sometimes even more advanced economically countries. And this is because we've always held women in high esteem. They always are willing to engage in society in a very productive manner. And with this said, actually, you see a lot of women candidates involved in this year's election, and it's a very good indication that women are not only passive observers, but actually actively engaging within the political system of Bahrain. And this will actually increase. We expect it to increase also through time because it might support younger women to become more involved in the political system in the future, which is a fantastic result.
Mr. Abdulghafar, I want to allude to the youth sector and youth participation, but just going back to the women point, do you witness a change in mentality when it comes to accepting women in the field, not only in that field, in managerial positions? We've seen women ministers, women judges, and women taking a more active part in government life, not just in parliamentary elections. Do you witness a change in the Bahraini society perception with regards to accepting women in fields or in positions of power?
I think that based on the efforts of His Majesty the King through the reform program and through the efforts of the Supreme Council of Women, we see a lot of engagement of women to assume leadership position. And this is true both across the public and private sector. And it's a very strong indication that women are very capable of handling these maybe high-pressure jobs or responsibilities in a very effective manner. And with this said, actually, you can even look at the political process where you see women have a very strong role. And I do believe that the Bahraini constituent in 2018 is a lot more accepting and open-minded to women candidates. And this is it's a very fantastic result because we will see this will actually encourage more women to participate in elections in the future.
And we're reaping the fruits of this reform project and of the change management strategy, so to speak, to get the constituents to accept having women candidates represent them in the electoral process. Mr. Abdulghafar, we have 50,000 new voters this time round for 2018.
Very exciting, yes.
50,000 new voters that are fresh, that are young. This young participation, how would it reflect on the whole electoral process?
You know, I actually hope I'm still considered part of the youth demographic. Yeah, but you know, this will be my 3rd time voting in these elections, and for the 50,000 new youth voters, it is a fantastic statistic because it shows that there's a lot of interest from youth to become involved within the political system of Bahrain. Not only in terms of voters themselves, because now there will be maybe a little bit more, how do you say, more strident in terms of seeing who's the most favorable candidate that can represent their rights and their interests, but also because of very youthful candidates now have an advantage, which I would say is they are more acquainted with the different new technologies available to them. We have social media, different forums, and different means of communicating with constituents that maybe you could say updated previous models. in terms of running campaigns and elections. And with that said, we expect that this figure, this 50,000 new voters, is going to be a phenomenal figure that we expect it to grow because, you know, as you know, Bahrain is a very youthful country. I think a vast majority of our population is very youthful. So the fact that 50,000 new voters have registered to vote in the 2018 election is a very strong indication that there's a lot of will and intent to participate within the political process.
And do you believe this youth participation, the youth demographic, could change the program of certain candidates, you know, have them steer them towards a certain agenda that the youth are more concerned with?
I think the young voters in Bahrain, they will be appraising the candidates very more carefully perhaps than previous generations, because now they see, okay, we see the challenges that their parents have faced, and the youth now are facing new challenges that might be different from their parents. And now they'll be a little bit more cautious in casting their votes to a candidate that suits their goals the best.
Exactly.
And not just repeating certain slogans, but more concrete ways of how their representative can improve their lives and Bahraini society as a whole.
And like you rightly said, Mr. Abdulghafar, I mean, the youth are privileged to have been born within the reform project of His Majesty the King, and witnessing this at a very early stage in their lives compared to their parents perhaps. And I've witnessed this firsthand in my own household, where the youth demographic who are excited to be voting right now would go and you know, study each candidate's electoral promises, so to speak, and points to see if he or she would fit their demands best. Mr. Abdulghafar, we were talking about this before we went on air, about spam messages, be it through text messages, phone calls, social media, telling people or dissuading people from going and practicing their democratic right. What do you have to say about these messages?
You know, we unfortunately live in an era where information travels very quickly, sometimes without verification. Some people refer to as fake news, and unfortunately, this is a reality with the prevalence of technology today. And but I want to refer to a survey that the Bahrain Center for International Strategic Study conducted, and they said that 82% of respondents within the survey said that voting is a national duty, and also it should be a privilege for the country as well. So when you have different sources saying that you're ineligible to vote, or casting just fake news in general, it's problematic. But I think the Bahraini constituents and non-Bahraini residents as well are much smarter and much more intuitive than that. They know they will be able to see and identify that these messages they're completely false, and Bahrain is proud to participate within these elections. And even going back to the point of the new generation of voters, I think it's also very important to highlight that from the survey that I mentioned before, that 72% of voters they will cast their ballot based on competency and honesty of the candidate. And this is something that reflects of the maturity, the democratic maturity within the Bahraini society. So when you have these statistics compounded with fake news and these different messages, I think it goes to show that Bahrainis are much more smarter and much more competent to realize what is an actual effect of the democratic process, and what is something that's attempting to hinder it, but unsuccessfully hinder it, of course.
So the message is clear, Mr. Abdulghafar. Don't let anyone or anything stand in your way of going and practicing your democratic right. Mr. Abdulghafar, today and your viewers, today our coverage includes a network of correspondents who are spread across the kingdom to report on the field process of the voting process at the polling stations. We now turn to our correspondent, Mohammed Yusuf, who joins us live from the Sheikh Khalifa Institute for Technology polling stations in Muharraq Governorate for more updates. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning, Muhammad. Yes, I am here in Muharraq Governorate at Khalifa bin Salman Institute of Technology. The atmosphere here is filled with excitement as massive number of voters are coming here to cast their ballots and choose their preferred candidates for their interest and for the interest of the Kingdom of Bahrain, of course. It is also worth to mention that Around 50,000 new voters are eligible to cast their ballots this year, and mostly young people. And it is important to focus on raising the awareness and provide the necessary knowledge to these young people for them to choose wisely for the interest for their interests and for the interests of the people of the kingdom and for the kingdom of Bahrain as well. And that is it for now from my side. I will come back for more updates in the next couple of hours, but as for now, it's back to you, Mohammed.
Mohammed, before you leave, did you vote? Did you practice your democratic right yet?
Oh, not yet. I will get to that after this right away.
You should. All right. Thank you very much, Mohammed. So, Mr. Abdulghafar, like Mohammed rightly said, we have people coming in the morning, different age groups, different genders, practicing their democratic right. Your reflections on that? I mean, I know we alluded to this in the beginning, but seeing this difference in age groups, difference in gender, coming together under for one purpose, and that's practicing their democratic right. What does it say about this whole process in Bahrain?
Absolutely. I'd like to refer back to His Majesty's King Hamed's reform program, and within the program he bestowed rights for every citizen and non-resident Bahrain to participate in municipal and parliamentary elections. And it truly is an honor to have this right. And I think that people who are interested in the state affairs of Bahrain, they will go out and vote today, because it's not only just a duty, it's actually a privilege and an honor to respond to the King, His Majesty the King Hamed's call. And like you said about the different demographics that are participating in the elections today, it's just it's a testament to how Bahrain is now entering a multi-generational effect within its democratic system. Like we alluded to before, maybe we have Bahrainis who are young during the first elections and are now growing up and participating within the elections now. So I think they're very excited to have a vote and partake in the legislative system of the country, and to protect their interests through the legislative system of the country. So it's a very exciting time, and I think a lot of optimism is occurring in the country, and we will see reflected in the results later today, I'm sure.
Mr. Abdulghafar, you alluded to a study that Derasat has conducted and shared certain numbers with us with regards to how the constituents are choosing their candidates now. Can you tell us more about this study and its findings?
Well, actually, what's interesting is the study itself reflects Bahrain's maturity in its democratic experience. Right now, we are witnessing that 72% of respondents of the survey, they want the key characteristic of their casting their ballot is competency and honesty, which reflects that now Bahrain is moving towards more a campaign, the importance of campaigns and how to communicate them, and how to also have sort of a feedback session with the representative as well. And then second to that, we also have the education and intellectual level of the candidate itself, where Bahrainis are opting to elect candidates who feel that can speak on their behalf in a very professional and a very strong manner. And this is very important, because before maybe perhaps there were different social ties regarding in terms of voting, but now we see it's now being elevated to on a different level now. We are seeing now the competency of the candidate is becoming a very important characteristic for voting. We're seeing their education level as being a very important characteristic as well. So we see this development within Bahrain's democratic system actually represented with the survey itself, which is a fantastic indication of how we're progressing as a country in our democratic process.
Within the results of the study as well, and I'm just looking at the highlights here, is you know, the main topics that form the premise of the candidates' messages to the constituents. We have several issues happening in Bahrain, several hot topics, so to speak, that has been discussed in the previous parliament and would probably be discussed in the parliament to come. And that's, for instance, the VAT, the issue of the health insurance law, and many others. In your opinion, what what are the main topics that will be discussed in the next parliament?
Oh, this is a very
very open-ended question.
Yeah. But you know, I think these different issues that you covered, right? So like the value-added tax, the national health insurance program. These are topics that will affect not only Bahraini citizens, but residents of the country. And I think now we will see a sort of, I wouldn't say bargaining, but I think voters now will be much more astute in casting their ballot. They're saying, okay, we know these challenges are ahead. How do you, how will you attempt to address these challenges? And with that regard, it's actually developing the Bahraini democratic system, because now the votes now have a lot more, you could say, value to them, or a stronger incentive to win those ballots from the candidates itself.
True.
In terms of other challenges faced with Bahrain, you know, it's a very convoluted and complex series of challenges that faces that spans across different sectors. We have housing and medical sectors, and you know, a value-added tax. So it will be interesting to see how the new candidates, the new parliament that's after being sworn in, how will they respond to their constituents in order to maintain their interests and help protect the interests of their constituents. So it will be a very interesting period, because we see a lot of candidates who might promise one thing but deliver another thing. But now there will be a lot more, you can say, observation on their behavior, on the process within the electoral system.
But like you rightly said, the constituents now have more awareness with regards to what are the topics that need to be discussed in Parliament, and want to make their voices heard. Unfortunately, there are also this other segment who have lost hope in the Parliament, and you know, they would say, why would I go out and vote if you know, my voice is not delivered? How do we assure or reassure these people, and you know, basically push them to practice their democratic right and make their voices heard?
I think it's also very important to note, like I mentioned before, that the privilege of voting as a part of the reform program of His Majesty the King's, I think it's important to sort of label what is the vote exactly. It's a privilege and a duty and an honor. I think if you have this mindset, it will compel you to go and vote, because it's a right that some countries might not have. You know, and it is actually common that countries might not participate in their voting processes because, like you said, they might feel like their voice is limited. But in Bahrain is not a big country, so a vote here has a lot more substance, compared to other states. And I think it's also very important to realize that that the duty to vote is it should be ingrained within ourselves. That we have to somehow look beyond maybe negative aspects, because we have to participate in the development of the country itself. And this is one very easy way to do it. Just, you know, go show your passports and you're done.
You vote, and then you can directly contact your candidate once they're in Parliament and make your voices heard through him or her.
Of course.
And then if you choose them on the premise of what they've promoted in their election process or electoral process, then you are making your voice heard. Mr. Abdulghafar, Bahrain also not only has given the opportunity, chance, and privilege to the nationals to cast their vote and make their voices heard, but also expatriates who own property in Bahrain have the right to participate in municipal elections.
Yes.
What does that say about the democratic process in Bahrain?
Well, this is an attribute that is very, how do you say, comprehensive within Bahrain, where even though you're not a citizen, you're still bestowed upon the right to vote in municipal elections. Because it's clear that non-Bahraini residents, of course, they will be affected by any decision that is undertaken by the municipal councils, their local municipal councils. So, of course, to grant them the right to vote goes to show that Bahrain, very early on within the reform program itself, identified this aspect and clearly wanted to involve non-residents within the municipal process in Bahrain, which is a fantastic attribute because it does not segregate between citizens and and non-citizens. If you're living in Bahrain, if you own property here, you will have that right to vote in municipal elections, because they too will also be affected by any decision or development that is undertaken by the municipal councils. And it's a testament to the wise leadership of the country to identify this process so very early on in the country's history.
One of the things, Mr. Abdulghafar, that Bahrain and the Bahraini electoral process have been commended for was the use of transparent boxes in the polling stations. Yes. What does that say about the transparency of the whole process in Bahrain?
I think in terms of transparency, it's a very interesting aspect, because it goes to show Bahrain's competency in terms of running elections in a very clear and transparent manner. This is the 5th round of voting that we are occurring, so Bahrain has amassed a lot of experience in terms of organizing elections, of voting systems, and like you mentioned before, over 50 centers to vote in the country itself. It's a testament, because it shows that Bahrain takes its transparency very seriously, and it's actually doing a very successful job in delivering these transparent results. And it's very important, because it could set Bahrain as a benchmark, as you could say, to other countries in terms of managing their own elections. And it could be similar towards the Formula One experience of the marshals. Bahrain, when it first hosted the Formula One races, we didn't have much experience, but now we're training other countries to running the marshal efforts. So we can maybe perhaps do this in terms of running elections and transparency.
So you foresee that in the future, hopefully?
It could be, yeah. It could be, yeah. It's always easy to say, but it's also difficult to predict the future. But
Mr. Abdulghafar, maybe we were a bit late in asking this question, but if we are to decipher the whole electoral process in Bahrain, and the National Action Charter followed in 2001, followed by the Constitution in 2002, paved the way for a bicameral system in Bahrain, with the elected representative council and appointed shura council. Yes. Can you basically explain that process, and what is the elections in Bahrain? What are we electing in Bahrain, basically?
Well, in Bahrain, the elections is actually occurring for the council representative, which, like you said, is the elected body of the National Assembly, which comprises of both houses of parliament. And the shura council actually is more, the members of that are appointed, but they're all different specialties, as we would call it, technocratic people who are specialized in very specific skills, because they might have a strong background within certain fields. And this creates a sort of like a check and balance within the system in terms of the legislative process, to ensure that the laws that are being passed are always laws that are appropriate for Bahrain and its country and the economy. And it's also very important, because it's also it's not a unique model, I have to say that, because we see this actually in the United Kingdom, where they also have the House of Lords, which is also appointed, and the House of Commons. Yeah, so it's a very common democratic system. And with this regard, it's actually showing that Bahrain is actually within the trend of democratic practices throughout the world. So it's very interesting.
Mr. Abdulghafar, we are now joined by our correspondent Yasmin Ibrahim from Al-Hassam School polling station at the Capital Governorate. The Capital Governorate does not have municipal elections. Yasmin, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mohammed. I'm here at the Al-Hassam Primary School at the Capital Governorate. And as you can see, people are lining up to cast their ballot. The organization is very smooth. It's going very smoothly, and it does not take more than 5 minutes. Just like you mentioned, the Capital Governorate is only for parliamentary elections and not municipal elections, as its municipal council has been replaced by the Capital Trustees Board, an appointed body in 2014. Everyone here is very committed to their role, the judges, the organizers, the monitors, and of course the voters. Joining me here today is the judge, Mr. Mohammed Abdullah Al-Mauda. Mr. Mohammed Abdullah, can you tell me about the high number of participants we're witnessing here today and the general atmosphere we're feeling?
First of all, thank you. Actually, today is a very important day in the Bahraini democracy. The Bahraini citizens are practicing the rights in choosing the representatives as per the constitution. And actually, we as a judicial authority here are inspecting and taking over the whole process to ensure the independence and the integrity of this process. Actually, we've been seeing a very large number of participants here, and actually it goes back to the awareness of the people knowing their rights in voting. So we're here from 8 o'clock a.m. until 8 p.m. After that, the process of counting the votes will start, and of course the initial results will be given by us, and then the final results will be given by the higher committee.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed, and that is all I have for now. Mohammed, I'll be back during the day with more updates.
Thank you, Yasmin. We'll get back to you in the course of the program. Mr. Abdulghafar, we go back to the campaign platforms of the candidates running for office. Is it true that the constituents are now more aware as to what they want their voices to be, or what they want the topics to be that the candidates represent in Parliament now?
I believe so, yes, because now actually there are certain candidates, if they didn't have social media, different platforms, they're actually questioned by voters because, oh, you're running for elections but you don't have a social media presence. So it's also very interesting because these different tools allow voters to see in depth about the different campaign promises, campaign platforms of the different candidates, and this makes them actually to be a lot more picky, you could say, in terms of casting their ballots, because now they can compare and contrast between different candidates. They can be a lot more resolute in asking questions about how will they safeguard the interest of the constituents and different aspects of this. And also, it's also very important to mention that the monitoring of the elections is on a very high level for Bahrain, because we see now the different organizational efforts needed to conduct voting for different centers requires a lot of experience and also a lot of depth in terms of our organizational capacity. And especially this is especially true since there are over 50, I believe, voting centers across the country. So the mass amounts of volunteers you will need, of coordinators, it's a very demanding effort between all this coordination. And we can see now that things are running very smoothly, and there are high numbers turning out, and it's a very strong testament to the democratic process of the country.
Mr. Abdulghafar, you mentioned a very interesting point, and that's how basically perceptions evolved in the past decade when it comes to elections. One of the polling studies that I've seen on certain social media sites is whether the candidate running for office has a social media platform, and that seems to be a determinant in basically for the constituents to say whether or not this candidate is fit to represent them if they are not present on social media platforms. So it's very interesting to see this involvement in thinking when it comes to the constituents.
Absolutely. Also, so you can also consider it an environmental effort, because you won't have to pass around leaflets to people's homes anymore. You can just see the entire platform conveniently from your mobile phone or computer. So it has like a positive externality effect as well. So it's the future of campaigning in Bahrain for sure. The social media platforms is providing a direct access to the campaigns from the different voters, and they can always question different aspects of their campaign promises and how they expect to deliver them.
And then that takes us to the question which is on every voter's mind. How do I choose my right candidate?
This is always going to be a personal question, but I think for a constituent, a Bahraini constituent, I think it's best to implement the analytical approach, which is you compare and contrast the different platforms of the candidates within your electoral circle, and try to engage them, either attending their campaign launch, their headquarters, or trying asking questions on social media, see how quickly they respond. I think there are different tools now available for voters to determine who's the best candidate that will uphold their interests. And it's going to be developing with every single round of elections in Bahrain, and expect a lot more a pickier Bahraini voter in terms of the future, because they'll always look for the candidate that best suits them, no matter what.
Dear viewers, we are now joined by our correspondent in the Northern Governorate, Hiba Abdalghafar. Good morning, Hiba.
Good morning, Muhammad.
Hiba, could you tell us what the atmosphere is like where you're at?
Okay, the atmosphere, everything is very organized. The balloting doesn't take more than 5 minutes, so I urge all citizens to bring their Bahraini passports and come here and cast their ballots. I'd like to highlight that this is the governorate with the largest number of voters. We have 125,000 voters, actually more than that, out of 365,000 approximately voters in Bahrain. 62,000 of them are women. So Bahrain is pioneering in supporting women, and this is very clear here today. If you look at the voters behind me, there are so many women here today participating. They believe in the candidates and they believe that they will convey their voices. This is not new. Bahraini women have been participating in municipal work since the 1920s. And worth mentioning that the Supreme Council for Women has chosen the Bahraini Women Day to be dedicated to legislative and women working in the municipal work. So this is a celebration of 20 years of women participating in the first Shura Council, appointed Shura Council, and 15 years of working in municipal work, elected municipal council. So in general, everything is very organized here. Everyone is doing a great job. The judges, the organizers, the monitors are doing a great job. The voters, their spirit is great.
Yes.
They are part of Bahrain's future, as they have been always part of Bahrain's history.
Yes,
it's very busy here since it opened at 8 a.m. So if you have any further questions, ask me.
Thank you very much, Hiba. We'll get back to you in the course of the program, and we were very happy to see these images of young people, women, men, even children in the polling station, and so early on in the day. Voter turnout, if we were to talk about this, what are your reflections and anticipations of the voter turnout in this round of the legislative elections?
Well, turnout is always an interesting aspect, because some see it as a barometer in terms of success of elections. And actually the survey that we conducted at Derasat pointed out the expected turnout of voters to happen between 44 to 70%. So within this range, you can see there's a significant amount of interest in the 2018 elections in Bahrain. Even if we look at conservative numbers, say maybe 50%, I expect it to be more than that, but say if it's just looking at 50%, this is actually it's considered a very high turnout on the global rates. In countries such as the United States, the UK, you would see numbers of between 40% and lower. So to have numbers greater than 50% is actually a tremendous achievement for the democratic process of the country. So, and I expect it to be a high turnout as well, as we could see from the different coverage of the voting itself in Bahrain.
Right, Mr. Abdalghafar, we're taking a short break and we'll be back, dear viewers.
تسكن في روحي ودمي وفؤادي بحريننا هي أرضي وبلادي تسكن في روحي ودمي تباشيره
يسكن صدرنا في تباشيره
هوا هوا بلدنا ما نبي غيره
هوا بلدنا ما نبي غيره
يسكن صدرنا في تباشيره
يسكن صدرنا في تباشيره
الحب حبنا والصدر واسع
الحب حبنا والصدر واسع
يحمي بحرنا وكل بحاحيره
بحرنا وكل بحاحيره
الحب حبنا والصدر واسع
حبنا والصدر واسع
يحمي بحرنا وكل بحاحيره
بحرنا وكل بحاحيره
حق المعالي يا بلدنا
حق المعالي يا بلدنا
اسمك نجمنا في السما ضاوي
نجمنا في السما ضاوي
باسم بحريننا قلبي مولع
بحريننا قلبي مولع
وبأهلها أنا قلبي مولع
قلبي مولع
في هواها أنا قلبي مولع
قلبي مولع
وبثراها أنا قلبي مولع
قلبي مولع قولوا ما شاء الله ولا إله إلا الله على البحرين
البحرين
سموا باسم
قولوا
قولوا ما شاء الله ولا إله إلا الله على البحرين
البحرين
سموا باسم الله قولوا ما شاء الله
ما شاء الله
لا إله إلا الله على البحرين
على البحرين
سموا باسم
الله الله
قولوا ما شاء الله
Dear viewers, we are continuing this live coverage on today, the 24th of November of 2018, where Bahrainis go to the polls to vote and select their appropriate representative in the Parliamentary and Municipal Council. We are still with Mr. Mahmoud Abdalghafar from دراسات. Mr. Abdalghafar, if we are to compare the Bahraini example to the region and assess the Bahraini experience regionally, what are your reflections on that?
I think if you look at the history of the region, Bahrain has always been very aware of its political process, of its political development, very early on compared to other regions. And it's also present throughout the history of Bahrain, where different, you could say, political trends or different elements of that really initiated the development of Bahrain's political process has always been apparent throughout Bahrain's history, more so in 2002 with the reform program of His Majesty the King now, because it solidified the system in a very tangible environment that allows the Bahraini citizens and non-Bahraini residents to participate within the system. And it goes through different, you could say, political trends as well, because sometimes the Bahraini voters would be favorable of different political societies. Sometimes they'd be more favorable in terms of independent candidates. And you see this trend that's occurring now. And it's occurring in a very natural way, where Bahrainis now more so than ever are looking more towards a candidate that will uphold their interest first and foremost, more than anything else.
And with regards to the monitoring and auditing process of the whole electoral process in Bahrain, we see that there are different panels with judges at different polling stations. What does that say about the transparency of the whole process in Bahrain?
I think it goes to show that the candidates, they have to be properly vetted before they can run for parliament in Bahrain. It goes to show that the ministry is taking its astute responsibility to make sure that the elections are running smoothly with appropriate candidates for the country, and they're very transparent about the decisions they take. And it's very important because it shows that the process, there's no opaqueness about it. Everything's there, it's very clear. And the Ministry of Justice and Islamic Affairs Endowment is actually conducting its responsibility in a very effective manner to always have this this notion that the transparency will always be at the forefront of their activities in terms of the elections.
Mr. Abdulghafar, with the efforts of the Ministry of Information Affairs and different press and media outlets in Bahrain, the media coverage of this, and what we're doing right here on this platform, the media coverage for this electoral process has been very sturdy and strong. What are your reflections on the media coverage, and why do you think it's important for the media to cover this event in Bahrain?
I think it's always important to put the thought of voting, of going, undertaking this national duty in people's minds. And the coverage of the elections is a natural tool that will go about to achieve this objective. We can see actually now many different local newspapers of Bahrain have conducted their own surveys, their own polls regarding the election. So you can see that there's a lot of interest being generated by the local media in terms of covering the 2018 elections, which is fantastic because it goes to show that there's always going to be the thought of voting during voting season. And it's also going to entice voters to go out and conduct their national duty of voting. And it's always going to be a very positive aspect of covering elections in this much amount of detail with this much care and consideration.
And you can see what is happening in the papers, and like you said, with the different polling, studies and tests being done in these different media publications. It kind of reflects what happens in other countries globally, on a global scale, when it comes to an electoral process with different polls predicting who would win and back the election. Of
course, when you're actually mentioning different polls itself, I think there's also room for development for different local media sources to develop their polling techniques, because there's a lot of different variables involved within polling. I think in Bahrain we haven't reached that level of accurate polling compared to other countries. But this is the bedrock where that allows you to develop different polling techniques for the country itself. And I think it goes to show about Bahrain's maturity and its democratic experience, even through specific examples such as polling. And it's going to be very interesting to see how it develops through time, and it will develop for sure.
Mr. Abdulghafar, with regards to certain fake messages that have been spreading, like we alluded to earlier, when it came to people, messages coming and telling people that they've been disqualified and can't go to the polling stations and practice their democratic rights. There are other messages that His Excellency Sheikh Khalid bin Ali addressed yesterday, the Minister of Justice and Islamic Affairs, with regards to ramifications, government-imposed ramifications for those people who don't go out and vote. What do you have to say about this?
I think I think you alluded to the point beautifully, because the minister herself had to come out and say these fake news, it's not accurate. It's fabricated news, and for the ministry to go out and to directly address this issue, actually it impedes any further attempts to disseminate even more fabricated news. So we should actually commend the ministry for going to this very strong approach and addressing the news directly, because otherwise the fabricated news can circulate, it can create a very false impression, and for the leadership within the country to directly address this issue at heart, it goes to show that Bahrain is very well acquainted in terms of different current media practices, such as fake news.
Yeah, but this is also the epitome of freedom when it comes to giving you the option of going out and practicing your democratic right, but then again also not forcing you to do it. It's your choice, it's your call, it's your duty, but it's your choice at the end of the day.
Of course, like you said, it's a very personal decision to make. It is a national duty for sure, because it was a right bestowed upon His Majesty the King Hamad to the citizens of Bahrain and residents as well. And it goes to show that no one is going to coerce you not to vote or to vote. This is your decision entirely. Of course, it will be better for you to oblige and to the call of voting by His Majesty the King, because it's always a very proud moment for the country and for the nation and its future and development.
And it's good that you just said that, because there was a letter, a mass letter that was sent to the voters in Bahrain, to the citizens, personally drafted by His Excellency Sheikh Khalid bin Ali, calling on them to vote, thanking them for voting in previous terms, and calling on them to practice their democratic right and show up and vote. It's a beautiful gesture.
Yes.
And what do you think of this personal touch that His Excellency has added to the whole process?
You know, actually, I received the letter a few days ago, so it's nice for the country to acknowledge my previous voting. But it is a very personalized touch in terms of supporting people to go and vote, because it shows that these elections are very important to the country, and that it also represents the importance of the citizen itself to be involved in the process itself. And it's a very personalized touch. It's very how do you say, heartwarming, you could say, that you would receive a letter from an important Bahraini leader to go out and vote. I think it just reaffirms the support of the elections for the 2018 round.
And on a personal touch, I have, and my family have been personally touched by this letter, and it kind of pushed and reaffirmed my position and my drive to go out and practice my democratic right and choose my representative.
It's acknowledging your previous involvement in elections and hope that you continue this practice in the future. And it's a very heartwarming gesture for sure. I don't think many other countries even go out to do this sort of personalized gestures, and it's fantastic. It's giving Bahrain's touch in terms of its electoral process.
And from this platform, we would like to thank His Excellency Sheikh Khalid bin Ali for this personalized gesture. I am told by the control room that we have one of our correspondents ready to go on air with us. We now move to our correspondent Shog Mohammed from the Isa Town Primary School polling station at the Southern Governorate. Good morning, Shog.
Good morning, Mohammed. Thank you so much. We're very excited to be here.
So can you tell us
the school
what the
is
atmosphere
massive
like
and
there?
is quickly being filled up, as I'm sure you can see. People are very excited to cast their ballots, make their voices heard. On the way here, people were handing out flyers, we're handing out flags, we're handing out posters. Everyone is just super excited this term, and people are very eager to hear the results. I'm sure you know that, as we all know, the highest number of women are casting themselves this year. And there are so many women voters here who are very excited about that. There are young women who are voting for the first time and are very happy to see the number of women candidates. There's people of all ages, ranging from first-time voters to people who have voted endlessly ever since they've been given the chance to vote. And everyone is just very buzzing with excitement, buzzing with anticipation, and everyone is very eager to see the results.
Shog, can you tell us about the whole process of voting? How long does it take? What do they need to have with them? We know that they need their passports and their smart cards with them. But can you tell us about, can you walk us through the process?
Well, Mohammed, we need to have our passports and our national identity cards, our CPRs, with us for them to stamp. And the process doesn't take that long, but like I said previously, the place is filling up pretty quickly because a lot of people are eager to come as early as possible. So to avoid the lines, it's better to come as early as possible. The lines are starting from inside all the way to outside in the streets because people are coming as groups, families are coming together. Like I said, from first-time voters to grandparents, everyone is coming together. So the process doesn't take long. People seem to already know who they want to vote for. So there isn't much of a thinking process. People are just very eager to cast their vote. They already know, they've already determined who they're voting for. And the process doesn't take that long.
Shoga, I can see from the rushes there are different age groups. You see, grandparents and parents and even children being brought to participate in this democratic race. With your reflections from the conversations you had with people, how do you sense the feel that people have in bringing their children to this polling station?
I think everyone is very excited, including the children. There are people who are too young to vote, but are eager to vote in the coming term. They've come to see the process. They've come to learn about the democratic society that we have here in the Kingdom of Bahrain. I've had really young children asking me about when they can vote. So it's very nice to see how people are excited. I've had grandparents who said that this is their third, fourth time voting, and they're just very excited. They come every time and they wouldn't miss it. And they're just very grateful to have the opportunity to vote, to have the chance to make their voices heard.
Shog, thank you very much. We'll come back to you a bit later in the program. I hope you managed to cast your vote yet.
I definitely did, and I'm very happy about it. And thank you, Muhammad. We'll speak to you later.
Thank you very much, Shog. Thank you. Abdulghafar, you know, I know I alluded to this several times throughout the show, and even every time we go out to our correspondents and see the massive lines in the background and the different age groups, and you know, the smiles and the flags and the colors. What are your reflections on the voter turnout? I mean, as you can see, it keeps escalating as we go back to our correspondents on the field.
Of course, actually, the taking your children to the ballots just to witness the voting process, it in itself is the process of developing their democratic maturity. Because once they are acquainted by going to the ballots at such a young age, they understand, okay, these are the documents I need to participate in voting. This is the ballot itself. These are the different candidates. So this will actually entice the youth to have a better grasp and understanding of the country's democratic process. And it's, of course, the turnout is expected to be very healthy, especially given when compared to global averages as well. I expect it to be well over 50%. And it's going to be a very strong number compared to other even more developed countries economically. And it's always an important aspect to remember that with every round of voting that Bahrain occurs, it will lead to more development, more democratic maturity in terms of the candidates, of the constituents, who have a better grasp of saying, okay, I know what I want in the candidates, what are the different opponents are what is their platform, which platform best suits my needs, my interests, and my family's interests. And this, you will see it develop throughout time with the different generation as they grow up and begin to participate in the electoral process.
Abdulghafar, the previous parliamentary council had a lot of hot topics that were discussed. And if we are to allude to these topics and see what the main outcomes of the councils were, what would you say were the main issues that this council basically passed or brought about?
Well, obviously the most recent hot topic, of course, is going to be the value-added tax. But I think it's important to understand that the VAT, it was a decision that occurred at the GCC level. So, Bahrain, of course, being a key member of the GCC, had to oblige with this duty for the region as well. So it was very important that the candidates explained the reason why the VAT was needed and to their constituents in a very productive manner. And if that means that they might not be re-elected in 2018, then so be it. This is the democratic right of the citizens itself. But I think it's also very important that being upset in democracy is just as fine as being happy. Because no matter what, you will not be happy all the times with your candidates. And by being able to express yourself through your votes, like, okay, I saw your performance in the previous term, how will you look to improve? This goes to show that the democratic maturity that is occurring within Bahrain. They're saying it's okay to be upset with my candidate, with my representative. It's very natural. And now this will lead for the constituent to be much more careful or much more astute in terms of choosing a candidate. And this again goes to show that the maturity that is occurring within the Bahrain
democratic maturity, and you have the right to hold them accountable. And we'll get back to this in a bit. But dear viewers, the candidate for the Council of Representative membership is entitled to several rights during the electoral process in terms of campaigning and on the day of the elections as well. Now let's take a look at these rights with Assistant Councillor, Legislation and Legal Opinion Commission, Amina Al-Ma'la.
The candidate for the Council of Representatives membership shall be entitled to obtain one official copy of the voters' list in the constituency in which he or she is nominating in, obtain an affidavit from the Election Supervisory Committee for the Council of Representatives members indicating the acceptance of his or her nomination, to submit it to his or her office if he or she is a civil servant in order to be granted an unpaid leave, if he or she does not have sufficient leave balance, beginning from the day following the closing date of nominations until the end of the election process. During such period, he or she shall not exercise any of the powers of his or her public office. The right to choose two persons from the voters is registered in the voters list of his or her constituency to be his or her agents in the ballot and counting committees. To launch an electoral campaign in accordance with the rules stipulated in the Legislative Decree number 15 of 2002 with respect to the Consultative and Representatives Councils, the Legislative Decree number 14 of 1973 with respect to organizing advertisements and their implementing decisions. To withdraw his or her nomination by informing the committee in writing at least 10 days before the election's day. The committee should verify the identity of the withdrawing candidate and confirm this in front of his or her name in the candidates list of his or her constituency. This decision will also be announced on the day of elections at the door of the polling station of his or her constituency. The withdrawal decision will also be published by the Ministry of Justice, Islamic Affairs and Endowments in any of the local media at least 3 days before the day of the election. To attend by himself or his or her approved agent by the ballot and counting committee to the polling station of his or her constituency or any of the public committees during the ballot process, and to observe the election process and attend the counting process, but not the committee's deliberations. To challenge the result of the election held in his or her constituency before the Court of Cassation within 15 days from the date of announcing the election's general result.
Viewers, our coverage continues, our live coverage of the polling stations, but we take this short break and we'll get back to you. Welcome back. We continue our live coverage of the Kingdom's process of parliamentary and municipal elections for the 5th legislative term. And it is worth noting, dear viewers, that the parliamentary and municipal elections in the Kingdom of Bahrain are held under full supervision and administration of the Judiciary Authority to guarantee fair and independent elections. The Legislation and Legal Opinion Commission cooperates with the judiciary in organizing the elections by providing the administrative and logistical preparations for the elections, which enhances the neutrality, integrity and independence of the electoral process. The supervisory committees in the 4 governorates have seen a large turnout of candidates running for the Representative Council. The number of applicants exceeded all previous parliamentary elections, with an increase of 56% compared to the largest participation in the previous elections. Meanwhile, the Northern Governorate recorded the highest number of candidates with 127 nominees, followed by the Capital Governorate with 87 applications, محود with 67 applications, and the Southern Governorate with 65 applications. The number of female candidates rose to 44, marking an increase double the number of the largest participation of women in the previous parliamentary elections. Female candidates, dear viewers, account for 13% of the total number of candidates in 2018. As for the number of candidates for municipal councils, according to the governorates, the Northern Governorate came first with 73 applications, followed by the Southern Governorate with 49 applications and the محود Governorate with 38 applications. This reflects the keenness of the Bahraini people to participate actively in democratic development and promote gains under the constitutional institutions. The Bahrain Center for Strategic and International Studies, دراسات, conducted a survey on elections based on its forecast on feedback from 3,345 eligible voters. Those surveyed by دراسات this year identified key issues that will shape their choice during parliamentary and municipal council elections. Value-added tax, or VAT, pay rises, and early retirement were important factors influencing their parliament votes, along with housing and tackling inflation. Respondents said that they were looking for policies focused on infrastructure development, stormwater management, traffic congestion, and better urban planning for municipal council candidates. The overwhelming majority of respondents, 72%, said they were looking for honest and competent candidates, while 64% wanted well-educated and experienced, and 61% wanted candidates to be patriotic. 37% of respondents were backing independent candidates, 9% supported those backed by political societies, 6% valued candidates who are members of a religious society, 28% supported social activists, and 18% backed public figures. Another 5% viewers said that they supported other candidates. These results and percentages prove that voters do not care whether or not a candidate is affiliated to a political or religious society, but rather about his professionalism and integrity. Results showed that voter turnout today could exceed 60%. This is a remarkable number of voter turnout. Now we turn back to the program analyst from دراسات, Mahmoud Abdalghafar. Mr. Abdalghafar, the study showed an overwhelming number of expected turnout during this year's elections. We've basically summarized what are the hot topics, what are people interested in, what are people looking for in a candidate. If we go back to what are the candidates' duties towards the constituents, how could you summarize this for us?
I think it's important to first define the duties itself, whether it be within a parliamentary session or meeting constituents or talking to different government officials, that every candidate or every member of parliament always has to consider his constituents, because they are the source of how they were elected, obviously. And it's always important to always have an office running that their constituents can voice their concerns about what he or she should address, what different topics they should bring up in sessions. And it's also very important that that the member of parliament is always attending every session to their best capacity, so he or she can affirm that they are actually very active in the parliament itself. I think it's a very important aspect that the constituents are able to have this sort of feedback about the performance of their member of parliament through very visual cues, such as social media programs or live televised sessions. And it's very important for constituents to know that their rights and their interests are always being upheld by their representative.
Mr. Abdulghafar, we'll take a short break to see how the دراسات survey was conducted, and we'll come back to continue our discussion.
We are trying to measure the opinions of the citizen regarding the upcoming elections, as well as their opinion regarding the previous councils.
It's very important for the people to know more about the elections and how to choose the best person or the right person in the next elections in November.
The survey helped me a lot with finding out more about the elections and stuff, and I'm happy that I did the survey and everything.
We're back, dear viewers, and our discussion with program analyst Mahmoud Abdalghafar. Mr. Abdalghafar, we alluded to the municipal elections and the participation of expatriates in the elections in Bahrain. We said maybe this was an unprecedented step compared to other countries in the region and maybe even the wider world. What is significant with this move with regards to allowing the expatriates who own property in Bahrain to have a say in this democratic process?
I think it's a testament really that involves that citizens and non-citizens alike are key stakeholders within the country itself, because they are as well affected by the different policies enacted by the municipal council. And with this regard, it's always important that their voices should be heard should they own property, and to have this right and privilege to be involved in municipal elections is very wise for the country's leadership, because it shows that the concerns not only are not for the citizens but also for the residents within the country itself, and it shows that the Bahrain itself is accepting of all of its residents, irrespective whether they're citizens or not, to be involved within the municipal council and the efforts to have their participation in decisions that will likely affect their day-to-day routines.
Mr. Abdulghafar, we've witnessed an unprecedented women participation, both as runners for the election and anticipated participation by women voters in the voting turnout. This year, the slogan of the Bahraini Women's Day is celebrating the woman in the legislative authority, and you know, it comes at a time where, at a fitting time with the elections happening right now. What are your reflections on that, you know, on women's participation, the increase in women's participation in the electoral process?
I think this goes to show that women, Bahraini women, are always going to be key stakeholders within the country itself, not only in their households but also on in the public and private sectors as well. And for the Supreme Council of Women to recognize the parliamentary women is it's an honor really, to show how far has Bahrain progressed in terms of women's suffrage, from the reform programs that allowed them to vote, to participate in elections, all the way now to their running in different offices, and they're members of parliaments, they're different members of the Shura Council in various different sectors. So it goes to show that Bahraini women are very active in the societal level, in the governmental level, and in the private sector as well. It goes to show that Bahrain is a regional model in terms of how women's development is truly beneficial to the country and the citizens and residents itself.
Mr. Mahmoud Abdalghafar, a final message that you would like to deliver to the voters today?
I think it's important to recognize that not only is voting today a national duty, but it should be considered an honor, because it is a right bestowed by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, and it's always important to respond to this call and to perform the patriotic duty and to cast their ballot today.
Mr. Mahmoud Abdalghafar, Strategic Program Analyst at Derasat, thank you very much for agreeing to do this interview and for the information you've shared with us and with the viewers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is a reminder on the requirements for the voters for the parliamentary and municipal elections, which are outlined in this video by Assistant Councillor at the Legislation and Legal Opinion Commission, Ibrahim Al-Busmay.